Alrighty, another video. This Xi Jinping commentary. Oh my, this guy's so easily debunked again and again and again. This is the illusion of success. You see, you got the graph here and everything he's going to talk about. But here's what it is: this illusion, grand buildings, high-speed trains to nowhere, a government that is, well, let's be honest. They're so obsessed with appearances that they do something very interesting. They fabricate prosperity out of thin air, right? They create this idea that prosperity is real. Welcome to the fantasy economy of China, I guess is what you could say. A post. It's got some 53,000 views. Think about that. It's clearly propaganda. That's why it has 53,000 posts or 53,000 views. It shows a graph comparing the Hong Kong index to China's state-owned enterprises, claiming that SOEs are outperforming, enriching the people. Right? SOEs, state-owned enterprises, okay? The people building roads, funding education, and lifting some 800 million out of poverty. That's what they're trying to say here. But let's rip this apart for a second. First, the graphic at a glance here. It looks like SOEs are crushing it. But what you're actually looking at is something different. It's actually the opposite. What you're looking at is the collapse of China's private sector. The red line, the Hong Kong index, includes private companies that have been suffocated by CCP crackdowns, vanishing CEOs, overregulation, and fear. These are your companies that even you think about, like Jack Ma, right? Even he had to run. Of course, they're underperforming. They're being targeted by the Chinese government. Now, the blue line, those state-owned enterprises, they're outperforming only because the CCP made sure that there's nothing left to compare them to. These aren't success stories. These are monopolies. These are oil giants, banks, telecoms that are propped up by the state that is operating with no competition. There's no accountability and no incentive to innovate. It's not that they're thriving, it's that everyone else is dead. They're being compared to nothing. And the idea that they're making, trillions of yuan in profit, the profit doesn't go to the people. It doesn't fund small businesses. It doesn't stimulate innovation. It disappears into these, mega projects that corrupt officials put in their pockets, the surveillance tech that is used against people, or just more failed infrastructure. Roads to nowhere, airports without planes, ghost cities where no one lives. It's not profit. It's a Ponzi scheme with a red flag on top. And let's talk about the claim that Chinese students don't suffer from student debt. Sure, many don't take on loans, but not because education's free. It's because the education system is rigged. Bribes for admission, sky-high tutoring costs, fake degrees, useless diplomas in a job market that's already oversaturated. You don't need debt when the entire, education pipeline is a trap. You graduate and still end up living with your parents, unemployed, delusioned, and irrelevant. It's not freedom. It's a dead end. I know so many people in China that are very well educated but work for less than $1,000 a month. Why is that? Because everyone's educated. Everyone has a degree, right? It's not special. You try to go into a job and there's 10 million of you already there. You're like, well, I'm an engineer. Well, as China always brags about, there's already 10 million other engineers. And while it seems like a great thing, the problem is there is 10 million other engineers. They may not be, senior engineers or well trained, but there's plenty of new ones out there just like you. And this magical number, that they keep talking about, 800 million lifted out of poverty. China throws that around like a gold medal. But let's get real, okay? If 800 million were really lifted out of poverty, China would look very different. And if that were true again, that would have been before Xi Jinping even came to power. You know, China, any success that China has had with poverty hasn't come from state-owned enterprises. It's been embraced through capitalism. Capitalism has allowed people to be successful. What she's done is hit the brakes, re-centralize power, and pretend that the momentum hasn't stopped. And how does China define poverty anyways, right? It's less than $2.30 a day. So when someone goes from earning $2 to $2.31, they're counted as, lifted out of poverty. Meanwhile, the cost of living in cities like Shanghai or Shenzhen rivals global metropolises. Okay, my apartment in Guangzhou was $1 million apartment, right? All of them are. If you adjust the poverty line to anything remotely realistic, the miracle vanishes. Now the road to rural villages, let's go there. They always brag about that. We built roads to the most remote places. Well, okay, great. But what's at the end of those roads, right? No jobs, no hospitals, no opportunity. The roads don't lead to a better life. They lead to surveillance checkpoints, loyalty checks, and more reminders that the party controls everything. The villagers still leave if they can. They don't need concrete. They need freedom. The real question in this tweet is, would you prefer a system like this? Let's be clear. SOEs are not visionary public tools. They're parasitic bureaucracies that drain the economy of oxygen. In banking, they flood the market with bad debt. In tech, they fail to innovate and steal foreign IP. In energy, they pollute the planet while falsifying emissions reports. These are not engines of prosperity. They're factories of dysfunction. And guess what? The government knows this. That's why they censor economic data. That's why the housing market collapsed and no one talks about it. That's why foreign investment is running for exits and the youth unemployment numbers vanished from official reports. If the SOE model worked, it wouldn't have to lie about it, right? What this tweet actually proves is that when the government controls the scoreboard, of course, they win the game. But the people lose. Private companies get crushed. Innovation dies. Workers get stuck in dead-end jobs with no way out. And the only thing that truly grows is the lie. Okay? So no, we don't want this system. We don't want the rigged performance charts, the zombie corporations, and fake victories. We want accountability. We want freedom. We want real prosperity, not state-mandated success stories that are painted on the ruins of a broken company. This isn't a model. It's a mirage. And the world is starting to wake up to that. I hope you guys like this video. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Getting closer and closer to the end of the 30 for 30. Thank you so much. And have a good day.